you don't need to like jump to systems change. You're jumping from the system, which is you. Like you're a person, a system. Like my body is a system. My home is a system. And then the next layer of system up from that is my apartment buildings. I live in a small apartment block. That's a system, right? And then the next layer of the system is my street, all of the houses here. And then the next system is my neighborhood of multiple blocks. Then the next system level is my city, then my county, then my state, then my nation, then the world. So this idea that you can somehow leapfrog and then like have it trickle back down, it doesn't really work that way. You have to start with what you have and get to know your neighbors, get to know your local city, make real stuff happen. And that's where you really have your power and your ability to influence stuff is in these small community connections. And you'll actually figure out how to problem solve a few things.
Katie, welcome to the Accidental Gods podcast. How are you and where are you on this last day of March?
I am in Mountain View, which is in Silicon Valley in California, just south of San Francisco. And how am I? I find when people ask me that, it's usually like takes about a 2,000 word kind of like epic poem. So
Go for it.
it's always, I'm not good at the simple, having simple emotional inner structures.
Well,
Wow,
actually,
what a complex, what a rat's nest I just opened up for the beginning of our conversation.
I think it's
oh
great
my God.
because nobody has simple inner structures. It's just that on the whole, we don't tend to talk about them. And I'm looking over your shoulder. You've got a really lovely dog lying asleep behind you. So you're allowed to have not simple inner structures. Also, you're a single mother and you've got a 9-year-old daughter. And I imagine simple inner structures probably don't happen for the next 20 years. Sorry if that isn't how it was panned out for you. My wife's got grandkids, so I'm watching her daughters go through the same of life's going to calm down soon, right? I go, I don't think so.
No, I mean, I've never had a still and calm and simple one word kind of inner life. Like I feel like I can experience multiple emotions simultaneously in like a big sort of like geometric moving ball with different flows in it that I feel are poetic and sad and inspired and confused and an apersonality type and a crazy artist kind of at the same time. And all these kind of forces are all sort of pulling for dominance at different times.
Yeah.
And I'm rarely like really, really depressed. But I'm also really like calm and peaceful and happy. They're kind of like all forces all sort of moving at the same time. In terms of how I am. So I honestly feel like it's a question I can never clearly answer. And sometimes people ask me and I'm just like, well, if you really want to know, and I'm
and hey, we've got an hour's podcast. We could just spend the hour exploring that.
That's my own personal therapy session.
Yeah. And internal family systems. And what I love actually about your answer, because I think all of us have all of those. The question is we're not always aware that they're all operating at the same time. We tend to lean into the bit that's either familiar because we like it or we don't like it. And you're able to embrace the complexity of our inner structures. I was having a very interesting conversation with ChatGPT last night about the fact that we pretend that some of us pretend that we are rational beings and that everything that we think is basically linear and arranged and calm and all of the stuff that predatory economics is based on of, everybody is a rational human being who follows their Homo economicus mindset. And we know that's not true at some level, but we pretend we are. And then we connect to ChatGPT, which is just linear language pattern matching. And we pretend it has a deep emotional base. And at some point, we're going to have to unpick that one and understand that 99% of our responses are emotional and 100% of the responses are linear language. Anyway, that's a completely separate thing. I am aware that you started on this path when you were 8 or 9 and you were saving up your pocket money to buy a mug to save the dolphins. So I'm thinking that even when you were a kid, you had quite a complex inner life. Would I be right?
Yeah, yeah, and also I didn't actually answer your last question about how I am. I just sort of prefaced it as like I can't ever give like an honest one-word answer. But yeah, I was a bit of an unusual child. I was I grew up in a German immigrant family that had emigrated from Germany after the Second World War. My German grandparents were, my grandmother was quite an accomplished fashion designer, and my grandfather was a graphic artist. So they were excellent technical artists. And so I grew up in a home that was partly German speaking and very focused on the technical arts, like being able to draw, being able to do clay, being able to sew well was really the essential value system, and be able to make things look beautiful was the essential value system that my mother created in our home. We're definitely not into sport, not really into money, just really into like you had to be good at school and be able to just make things look nice. Like and always had every art supply you could ever imagine. And that was really what my childhood was sort of made of. And in contrast to the other kids, most kids don't really get brought up like that. That was very normal for me. And other children really, really brought up like that. So that made me, as I was sort of going through school, much more competent at whenever there was anything artistic to do than the other kids, which created also this rift because that's like a thing to be bullied for. Like it's not something like if you're really good at sport, you kind of get popular, but if you're good at drawing or embroidery, you get bullied. So I kind of had this weird schooling where I was just heavily bullied, and it also deeply connected to art and beauty. Just the aesthetics of things was deeply moving for me. And nature also is something that is beautiful. Like you can't really separate nature and aesthetics and design. And so my childhood was really filled with this desire to be deeply connected with things that were beautiful, whether it was fashion or pictures, fonts, illustrations, nature, all of it. And so then when there were messages coming in that trees were being cut down or whales were dying. I mean, this was intensely upsetting to me as a sensitive kind of artistic child. So very early memories I have of feeling intensely distressed that this was going to be destroyed and that it was my responsibility to do something about it. Like I myself I could do something about it. I never had a sort of a block in my sense of agency that, oh, that's someone else's job. I really felt like, well, it's like, of course I can do it. Of course, I've got to like write a letter or put a book together or just make a speech or something. Um, so yeah, it was just really in there very early on.
Right. I knew we were going to get on. I think that's something we have in common is the world has to change and it's my responsibility, which we couldn't spend the hour unpicking why we believe that, but let's leave that to our therapists. But we took agency and have spent our lives trying to make the world a better place. You told me just before we started that you had recently completed a project, let me get it right, Climate Action Design School. So we're going to talk about that later, but let's talk about it now. Let's start at where we are and unpick that, and then we can later see how we got there. Tell us about the Climate Action Design School. What's it for? What does it look like? Who's it for? And what's it going to do?
Yes, I would love to do that. But I just wanted to follow on something from what you just said in that last bit, which was the correlation between agency and art. We don't usually think of sustainability as something that is about art and about making. Like I did a lot of embroidery like as a kid. And so it was making things that I could, when I picked up a piece of clay or when I picked up a little needle or pens or paint, I could make it. I could have a vision in my head and I could make it and it was good at the end. I was proud of it. And I think that fundamental structure is what gave me the agency to just be like, I'm going to start a magazine. I'm going to start a company. I'm going to build my own app. Like I have absolutely no inhibitions with my sense of agency. And I never, ever had, ever right to those early ages that I couldn't come up with a vision in my head and then get to work and build it with my own hands, whether I'm soldering electronics or building a website or like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just like, we have to make it. Now we just write the to-do list and we figure it out. And that's something I've noticed that was really different about me to other people, that I just had this sense of like, just build it. It doesn't matter what it is, just electronic, digital, art, like a book or anything. And that's something I really try to I really want to get the word out to people to like that creative, like imagine it and then make it happen. Like not just talk about it or get annoyed about it or get upset about it or post on social media about it. And I really think this sense of agency that's really become the cornerstone of my work. That's really what I'm sort of an expert in now, is how to manifest and manufacture that agency in people. Come from those early roots of doing art, making stuff as a kid, um, which is sort of moving on to climate action design school, the agency, that sense of like, I can do it, I can change it. That feeling, that psychology, the dopamine that's required for that and the focus, that's what is the seed of climate action design school, which is a community and a 6-week coaching program that has all of the courses, the tutorials, all the training I've done in the behavioral psychology and the gamification and the design of how do you get people to do green stuff, like at scale. Like not just my green tips, but how do I get 1,000 people in my community? You want to get 1,000 people to compost? You want to get everybody in your community to get an EV? You want all the houses on solar? Like you can't just tell people about climate change and climate facts. You have to use many, many different tools, from storytelling to community marketing to gamification, behavioral psychology. There's all these things. And so I put it all together in a school that people can enroll in and learn all of the techniques and get all of the downloads, all of the tools I've made, the games I've made over the years, and also get expert mentoring from PhD behavioral psychologists, because they have a lot of knowledge that often like us environmental science folks don't have. So I'm trying to like put them together. So I put it all together in a platform that people can enroll in and then learn and meet each other and go through all of the steps to, to come out with really good climate action and environmental campaigns that actually work, because a lot of them don't work. A lot of them fail. And so I've seen them fail, 20 years of seeing what fails and what mistakes people make. So now I can pinpoint it all out and be like, that's a mistake, that's a mistake, that's a mistake. And that's really what I've been doing for the last 6 months is building this community. It hasn't launched yet. It's about to launch in probably about 6 weeks. Hopefully May. May is what we're targeting for, to have people enroll. And it's been I've had just my head in the cave. Had the blinders up, just doing that and nothing else for the last 6 months.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because agency and action and what we can actually do is exactly what this podcast is for. So we'll make sure we have a link in the show notes for everyone who is going to want to join, including me. I'm tempted to go down the what we've done wrong for the last 40 years route, but let's not. I think we talk about that quite a lot on the podcast. We give people ideas of doom. It's all going to be terrible, but we don't give them a sense of motivation, agency, direction, and empowerment. And therefore, what are they supposed to do except either despair or denial? There's not too many other options. So it sounds like you are offering the options, because by now the world is going to burn is pretty much universal. And I know some people are locked in kind of political denial, but it's there. People don't know what to do. So talk to me about the behavioral psychology and the gamification and how they work at a neurocognitive level, a cognitive neuroscience level, and then how they actually work in practice.
Well, yeah, that's a really like a big topic, but I'll try to break it down in a nutshell to get started. So what I generally have seen in the environmental movement, and this is also what my environmental psychology PhD experts that I interview on my podcast have seen too, observing, or I ask them a lot of questions. It's also what they say, is that there's 3 main levers that people who are sort of sustainability or climate professionals try to use to motivate their communities. And so one is knowledge. If people just knew about it, everything would change. If we just knew more climate facts, if we just knew about it, and that's called the value action gap, also called the information deficit hypothesis. But that's kind of like often people do already know about it. So it's kind of like giving people a vitamin when they don't have a deficiency. Like if you already know about climate change and you're already, I know about it. I agree it's bad. Getting them to know more climate facts is like, it's really not going to fill up something that's a gap, right? But it might be for some people if they do have a gap. So that's the knowledge thing: awareness, knowledge, education. But behavioral science proves over and over again, this is something that's very easy to test, that knowledge does not equal action. Like you can go and spend a weekend intensive learning everything about like electricity in the home and carbon emissions and this, and you can come up with an encyclopedic perfect, like, photographic memory knowledge of every carbon emission of this and that, and it doesn't lead to you actually getting on Yelp, calling up, like, solar installers and then, like, dealing with all the quotes and, like, figuring out, it's just like they're two different things, right? So that's one of the big mistakes, probably the biggest, and I think we all kind of start that way. So it's okay if you're in that space, we all kind of start there. And then the other one is like caring, right? So if we think if people just cared more, so that's when you get these really emotionally pulling communication styles, like the dead animal and the bird full of plastic, which does impact some people, but other people really don't like it. And this idea that essentially like a moral failing that we're not caring enough, which is also really not true because most people do care. So trying to get people to care more is often, again, like giving a vitamin that we don't need. We don't need to get people to care more because they already care. There's different things in place. And then the third one is money. We think that, oh, well, if it was just cheaper and if it was just more expensive, like you mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, you said that we're all these like econs, they call it, like the economic rationalist argument that we are just completely like price orientated beings. Not true at all. Money is a factor in how people behave, but it's often the weakest motivator. And financial incentives can often fail over and over again because they can't be stingy enough. Like they're not like a little bit of electricity, a few cents electricity here or there just isn't enough to make you really change. And I mean, that's a whole conversation in itself about money, but you can't just change the price of things and then you change the culture. You really have to change like the deeper value system. So these are these three big mistakes. You've got cities and governments thinking that if we just change the financial structure of everything, that'll change everything, which it doesn't. Like say something like gay marriage. That didn't happen because there was a huge financial incentive for it to happen. It wasn't like, oh wow, well, like if you look through all of the big changes that have happened, it's not because there were huge financial incentives. Well, there are sometimes, but not always. It's often because society's value system evolved over time. Like we don't hit our children anymore. That's not because, oh, suddenly
Someone
we're so
paid us
much
not to.
richer. Yeah, these things are moral evolutions and they're far stronger than financial incentives. So those are the big three errors, basically. Now, if we want to actually focus on action, like actually getting people to do stuff instead of just learning and caring and then not doing anything, which is often where we end up. There are five main levers to the brain, or five sort of categories of things that get people to action. So the first one is using the dopamine reward system, which is just as simple as tracking progress towards a goal. So if you've gone and learned you've gone to a 48-hour deep dive into climate everything, you come out at the end of it. What if you instead had a specific goal, like, oh, I'm going to like call 10 different solar people by the end of the week. That's your goal, right? And then you have a way of tracking progress towards the goal. You print it out on a bit of paper and you give yourself a smiley face for every one that you do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It might sound silly, but I need to gamify my own life. Otherwise, I would never get anything done like that.
Yep. Yep. So
Tracking
that's kind of
progress
auto
towards a goal, right?
gamification, and it works. Yes. Yeah.
It's just reflective of the dopamine system. It's coming up with a goal, like a deadline, a line in the sand, and then you're tracking progress to get there. And it's that sense of like crossing things off a to-do list. That's why we like that feeling. And you can just go all the way up with gamifying that, or you can just keep it very simple. So that's the first thing. Like, do you actually have a goal? And are you tracking progress for people towards that goal? And you'd be amazed how this is missing from just so many like campaigns and meetups and conferences and systems and stuff. So super simple. Okay, so that's the first one. And then rewarding the progress, The next one is social comparison. Like when we compare people to one another. Some environmentalists don't like this one because they're like, we don't want to be competitive. Like we all want to like collaborate and be equal. But reality, like if you get everybody on your street and you look at the carbon emissions of everybody on your street for their home, and then you let everybody know and you rank everybody, and then maybe you make a group and then you have multiple groups like a football team. And you're like, well, your street is this average, their street is that average, their street is that average. Your cognition is able to understand that. You can interpret, well, why is this person an outlier and just using like 3 times more than everybody else? Like, what's going on? I mean, maybe something's broken in their house. Like sometimes there are like weird things going on with electrical systems where something will be turned on and just drawing kilowatts and nobody even notices. Or solar panels that aren't plugged in properly and aren't generating. There's all stuff like that goes on. So at least our cognition is primarily comparative. So getting any comparison, you're comparing hotels together, schools together, universities, parks, rivers, anything. Like you really want to leverage. If you look in the behavioral science, when you show any tool or message or icon or label in some way, when it shows how it compares to the average or how it's like comparing to all the other things, that's when it works. And if it doesn't really show that, it probably doesn't work, doesn't influence people. So that's the second one. The third one is social imitation, which is social norms, like showing pictures. Instead of like showing pictures of like climate doom or like here's like a river that's full of trash, you show a picture of the person doing the action. Like this is me drinking out of my reusable water bottle. This is me riding a bike. This is me on my roof installing a solar panel. This is me turning up to my local city meeting. And so you're creating these like visuals of like what you want the person to be, so they will imitate that. That's again very powerful. That's what drives most of our behavior, is we're kind of copying everybody all the time. And then there is trust, which is writing a promise to another person. Like if I promise to you, if I say, hey, Amanda, I've decided to take on the 10 solar challenge. So I promise to you, and I'm going to write it down, that I'm going to call the 10 solar panel. I've been putting it off for 3 years. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to put a day down and I'm going to call them all. I'm going to get the quotes and I'm going to get to the bottom of this finally. And then you and I are going to meet in 10 days and I'm going to report to you what I learned. We've made a promise to each other. And I'm going to feel like a total loser if I do not show up, and I will be forever shamed in my mind to you, even if you're very nice about it. I will feel shamed if I don't come through. So that's super powerful stuff. Like just get two people together to make an agreement with each other will be so much more powerful than like the most in-depth climate documentary in the world. And the final one is group identity. So if you've got groups together and we have a group, so we've got 10 people in our group, that we have a sense of identity and a sense of cohesion and a sense of like accountability to that group. So you can like create groups and give them names of local animals or colors, or just once you get people to sort of identify with a group, that they feel like this is my group and I need to behave to the norms, the expectations of this group. And if the expectations are, by the end of this month, we all get 3 people to turn up to the local city meeting to talk about the bike path, then you got to show up. If you're a member of that group, you got to do your to-do list and get there. And you can make badges for the group, like I'm a so-and-so. You could have membership cards. You can sort of use creative visuals to get that group identity going, because if you think how powerful group identity is, like say, for example, if you're a left-wing, like left sort of voting person, like it's just not okay to be like pro-Trump. Like it's just not okay. Like you cannot exist socially in your group with a different mindset. So if you think about the values, they're so strong. Like you really can't vary from that sort of group. Like if you're in a vegan group and then you start eating meat, like you're out. Like you can't be friends anymore. Like these group dynamics are extremely powerful. So that's it. So all the stuff I teach basically branches from those 5 kind of sort of main categories, and tries to steer people away from education. And using this thing called cognitive load, that's something that I just find coming up. Choice architecture and cognitive load is just, I feel like, is coming up for me a lot now, which is just that we make decisions based on the amount of cognition that we have. Like attention is limited. We're all basically in the attention game now. Attention is a limited resource.
Yep. And it's being strip mined by the social media companies. So
absolutely.
We've got a lot less than we used to have.
Absolutely. Everywhere. Everyone is trying to get your attention, and very well-funded, clever people are doing everything they can to get it. So if you present something that's not automatically going to work with people's cognition, they just reject it. Like if they look at it in 2 seconds, if I don't understand it, I can just go to the next. I can look at Beyonce, like I don't need to look at this. So really understanding that first 2 seconds of cognition when people see like a message is really important. And there's a lot of ways that you can ruin that. You can make mistakes with that. And then just and that's sort of very connected to this thing called choice architecture. That when you're presenting people's information, you're giving them just really clear choices they understand. And this is something that's heavily scrambled by the environmental movement, because you get a lot of these like 553 ways to like take climate action. and 2023 ultimate green tips. And, you know, it's just, you know, these like big like guides to like, here's the everything. And that's just really not how humans work. You really want to give people just 3 simple choices that work for them. And then like really just really deeply understand that idea of choosing nice, clear, easier to understand choices. So I think a lot of environmental campaigns just scramble and shoot themselves in the foot because they really mess up that stuff. And that's the end. I'll finish my answer now. There you go, the long,
Oh, I
long
have
nutshell.
so
That's a
many
big,
questions,
big
Katie.
nutshell. Big, it's a giant nut.
Okay. All right, let's start from the back and start from what you just said and work backwards. We may not get to the top of my list. 3 clear choices. So, I live in a world where we live in a meta crisis. It's not all about the carbon. There's PFAs in the rain, there's microplastics in the soil. Industrial farming is busy strip mining the soil till there's none left. And we have democratic chaos, nuclear war pending, AI that's about to go rogue. It's a really big thing. And selecting 3 clear things from that will actually make a difference. I remember I was listening to a podcast with you earlier, and you said, I'll see if I can remember it and don't have to look at my notes. If you're not changing the numbers, you're not making a difference. Close enough? Is that roughly what you're saying? So we could change the numbers of solar panels and we'll still hit 10 degrees C because we could zero the carbon tomorrow. And if we don't change the microplastics and the Monsanto's glyphosate runoff and the PFAs, it probably won't help. And I'm not suggesting that the solar panels are not a good idea, but how, in the morass of all the things, how do you select the clear things that will land with people? So there's 2 questions in here. One is, how do you select the things anyway? And are people generally sufficiently aware at some deep limbic level that the problem is deeply, deeply complex and it's one of our entire system and we need total systemic change? Because I'm wondering, people don't take action because it just seems too vast. And does it seem too vast because they're being fed, here's 2023 different things you should be doing tomorrow? Or is it total systemic change? Changing the system from the inside out is hard. I don't know how to do it, so I'm not even going to start. Over to you. Did that make sense as a question first?
Well, that's like a lot of big topics together in one question.
One
Gee,
neat question, yes.
where do I start? But
Start with total
one sort
systemic
of
change.
thread, our total systemic change. No, can I not start with that?
Okay, start where you want to start. Go with it. Whatever works for you.
Because that's oh my God, that's a big. I've actually got a 4-part podcast series on exactly that.
I was looking for your
It's like
podcast. I couldn't find it. I'll look again. Okay.
it actually got taken down by Spotify for a couple of weeks, and it's back now. So you might have looked for it in that
Did
period.
it? Why? Because they don't like the idea of systemic change?
No. I think I think I used an audio sample from a song that got a copyright infringement. I snipped like a 20-second out of one of my favorite songs, and it got took down. Yeah, Tusk. I
Right.
won't do that again. Always use your royalty-free proper music, folks. Quite distressing, and you don't
Yeah.
hear from them for a few weeks. But anyway, so yeah, like that sort of system level influence is a big topic. But what was a sort of a through thread of your question was, how do I as a person sort of impact stuff? You know, there's just like there's so much around, and it can be really overwhelming. And what do you do, and how do you not overwhelm other people when you're trying to influence other people? Because what I focus on is usually how to influence other people, not so much just your own stuff. So in terms of this big question, it's really like how we see ourselves, like our more sort of meta ways of viewing the world, of how we fit into the world. And so the way I see it now, or the kind of approach that I take, is you only really have control over your own creative flow. You only really have control over what you do in your life. You will never, ever be able to influence all that stuff. Honestly, you'll never even really be able to make systems change happen at a big level. Even if you're like the most influential person in the world. Like big names. We have like yeah, like he could even Elon Musk can only do so much. Like he can do a few things. He can do more than other people, but he still is limited, right? Like the world is a big complex place, and it's not our job to just like change everything and take it over and like, all we have control over is that we can tap into the flow of the universe's energy, manage our own emotions, our own attention, and the kind of purity or the kind of like positive intention of that flow of what the gifts that have been given to us with the resources that we have through our own creative fingerprint, through our own creative work, whatever creativity is for you, it's different for everybody. And that you can make things of value and usefulness in your community. And that is all any of us can do. That's it. We have no other control over everything. So I don't think you should try to do more than that. I don't think you should take on all of these big things or even really worry about them. And the thing is with the moving into systems change, it's kind of a bit of a red herring to think like, oh, like I shouldn't really like do things individually because what I really need to do is just like jump to like systems change. It doesn't really work like that. Like systems change from the fabric of individual people doing stuff in their communities. So if you want things to flow, like you have to do stuff in your community. I had this recent post that went actually surprisingly went really viral. I wasn't expecting it. And it's a map of saying that like you don't need to like jump to systems change. You're jumping from the system, which is you. Like you're a person, a system. Like my body is a system. My home is a system. And then the next layer of system up from that is my apartment buildings. I live in a small apartment block. That's a system, right? And then the next layer of the system is my street, all of the houses here. And then the next system is my neighborhood of multiple blocks. Then the next system level is my city, then my county, then my state, then my nation, then the world. So this idea that you can somehow leapfrog and then like have it trickle back down, it doesn't really work that way. You have to start with what you have and get to know your neighbors, get to know your local city, make real stuff happen. And that's where you really have your power and your ability to influence stuff is in these small community connections. And you'll actually figure out how to problem solve a few things. Like go and figure out how to get 10 permaculture gardens built in your local community. This is something I want to do this year. Like I just want to go out and go door to door and just be like, "Hi, I really want to build a permaculture garden. I'll do it for free. If you can just pay for the supplies, like I'll do it." Like, just do that. Like, just go out and meet people, make it happen, and then you are the fabric of change then. You have that power, and then people will copy you. That's how you create the change, and then it starts to build that sort of tapestry, that fabric of, because you're not really, like, creating systems change down. What you're creating is a tipping point of social diffusion. You're going from early innovators who are like, "I'll build you a free permaculture garden," and then they'll just be like, "Oh, well, like, maybe that person would like it too," and then they influence them. And so you're influencing the next layer, and then the social diffusion is influencing the next layer, and then the next layer, until when you get to about 25% of people, you get like a tipping point happen, and then the early majority come on. Yeah, and then the other half of people just sort of follow what everyone else is doing. So you really sort of think of it like a tipping point of diffusion rather than a like, I've got to go to the top and sort of fix something to
That's interesting because
trickle
I had
down.
really internalized Donella Meadows' levers of change, and the top one is change the paradigm. Well, the top one is abandon all paradigms. Second to top one is change the paradigm. And what you're saying is actually go into the levers of change quite low down, and let them ripple out, and it kind of flows up rather than trickling down. Yes.
Well, and honestly, that's all you can do. Like, that's all anybody can do. And all the most influential people, like, that is what they do. They're going to city meetings, they're knocking on doors, they're organizing groups with their neighbors, they're fundraising, they're asking for money to fund community
Mm.
gardens or microforests. Um, they're starting their own small not for profits. Like, that's how it's done. Like, that's how it all works that way. So but yeah, like just really focus like this idea of just like getting upset over the big world stuff. It's like it's not gonna get anywhere. Like nobody does anything through just like getting upset about stuff. Like you have to have a positive frame, move out of that and just be like, what is like God in the universe asking me to do with my creative skills? Like I'm full artist. Like I'm like what are my creative gifts? What can I do that's fun? What can I do that's creative? What can I do that's helpful? Like, these are the questions I ask myself, and I come up with cool ideas. So
Yeah.
I don't see any benefit from doing it any other way, um, at all. Like, it just seems really boring. So
And you, it seems as if this is quite spiritual. You said tap into the flow of the universe and ask what's mine to do, which is from my perspective a spiritual act. And I'm wondering, do you have a spiritual practice, a regular spiritual practice by which you do that, or is it an integral part of how you live? These two are not mutually exclusive.
yeah, I mean, I would say I probably do both. I was raised in a non-religious home, but I wasn't raised with any, like, religious or kind of spiritual structures. But I think when you get raised that way, you kind of do a fair bit of, like, soul searching of your own. You're like,
You
"Oh, like,
evolve your own. Yeah.
what are Buddhists about?" Like, "What does this mean?" But I'm also not, like, anti-religion in the way some atheist people are. Like, I'm quite open to, the sort of purpose of different faiths and find them really interesting to learn about. But one I mean, I don't always do this as my structure because sometimes I need to be very focused on getting things done. Um, but I just like to do a bit of yoga or a bit of exercise, and then I lie either flat on my back or sometimes I do it with a diary. Um, and I meditate on a question, like
Mm.
a big sort of wonder question. Like, it can be just, what does God want of me? And I'll just lie down, I'll just meditate on it. I'll imagine energy flowing through my body, like being really radiant, and be like, how can I improve my energy? How do I get better energy, better quality energy? How do I be useful? Um, what what is my gift for? Like, what are my gifts for in the
Right.
world? And then sometimes I'll do it for 2 hours. Like, I'll just, and then I get ideas. Something feels really crystallizes. Sometimes bad things come up. That's like, you have to get on top of this thing that you've been avoiding, and you've got to fix that relationship. And like, it gives me like a pretty painful to do list sometimes. Sometimes it's really fun. Um, but that's something that I'm often doing that. Except when I just have to be really focused and sort of work
Yeah.
orientated.
Got something that you're bringing out with a deadline. Because you've written a book as well. Did you write that to a deadline, or was that something that evolved through time?
Oh, no, that was hard work. Yeah, my book, How to Save the World. No, that was a fierce, hardcore 6 months, 12 hours a day without looking up, just trying to get to the end. It's very hard to do. I don't think I would recommend it. It was definitely like a really serious kind of ultra marathon thing to take on.
But amazing when you've done it. It's like rock climbing, I find, writing a book. You get halfway through and you think, really, I should be doing something else. But you get to the top of the climb or you get to the end of the book. Yes, we did it. Feels
I
grand,
didn't have
no?
that feeling.
You
No,
didn't? Okay.
no.
Write more. Trust me, it comes after time.
I mean, yeah, it was a bit of a slow. No, I was just telling like a friend of mine, um, after I'd launched the book and I'd put it out, and I got into such a low state after that, because the book doesn't like really make any money. So I'd been for this couple of years without earning any money at all. I had this 4-year-old child, and then I was like, well, I made maybe $10,000 or $20,000 from the book launch, but it's
Right.
not a salary. You can't
No,
really live
no,
off
you
that.
were working for
And
less than the minimum wage at that rate.
and I
Yeah.
and I haven't been building up like a client base, a clientele. So I've been incredibly socially isolated in terms of ways of getting paid work. And I was like, my life is at the lowest it's ever been. I was like, and I sat there for like half a day thinking, if I had worked at McDonald's for the last year, I would be in a better position than if I had just written this book. And I was just like, I just did the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it was a huge mistake. Like, I could have just worked at McDonald's and at least I would have had, and just thinking
But you
like
have the
this
book.
terrible, like, I did not see it as value at that point in time.
Okay. Do you
And
now?
I was going to, well, yeah, yeah. Well, I was applying for a personal assistant job, $25 an hour for a guy who was doing some work at NASA. And I was like, fine, I'll be your assistant for 25 bucks an hour. I was like, oh, I suppose I should do something now. And then, he was like, "Okay, I hired someone else for that job. I actually need some software design, like some thermal satellite software done." And I was like, "Yeah, I can design stuff. Yeah, yeah, okay." So I'm like, "No, you can pay my professional rate." I think I was charging like $60 an hour or something at that stage. Um, and then, like I got out of that mood state, and then I got a few other things, and I got a whole bunch of like design jobs and some public speaking jobs and a TED talk, and I sort of got out of that dip. But the dip was so real at the time. Like, I was like,
Okay.
"I have just done the biggest mistake of my life, like, writing this book." But then is actually and that book is now taught, in the
At
master's
Harvard.
class at Harvard University. It took me to, working for the United Nations, to being, actually presented at the United Nations General Assembly.
Cool.
And yeah, a lot of good things, happened from there, but there are some pretty, like, dark places you can go when you try to, I think, do something like that. But yeah, so I had the opposite to you, climbing the mountain. I didn't really climb. I went, like, down to the
You went
bottom of the
caving,
ocean. Yeah.
which is scary. I don't cave. Gosh, yeah. We could go down book writing, but let's not because there's so much else that I wanted to ask about. Talk to me more about gamification because that feels really of the moment. You were saying before we started that young people are into games, and for a very brief part between being a veterinary surgeon and becoming a writer, I worked in a computer games company, bizarrely enough, and I have thought since that actually there's a lot of scope instead of farming games that are basically industrial farming. What would happen if we gave people um, a game equivalent of a square acre of sand, and you can farm this industrially or you can farm it regeneratively, and it will function. Go see how it works. It wouldn't be hard. We could create games that were doing some of the things you suggested, creating the social norms, creating the rules, or not the rules, but the promises we make to each other. And instead, most of our games are trauma culture, power over, let's see how many things we can kill or destroy. Not the Minecrafty ones. But even then, our games seem to be predicated on a value set that's taking us over the edge of a cliff, and we could be building games that were taking us to our new values, or embodying our new values, let's say. And it sounds to me as if you are, even if you're just doing your little smileys for your 10 solar companies that you've been to see, you're gamifying a different value set. Am I hearing that right? Or am I just projecting what I think I want to have?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a value set, but everything I teach is measurement based. So it's all from the feedback loop out. That's where, hence that, if you're not measuring it, it's probably not happening quote comes from.
Right.
Uh, I mean, sometimes people develop games that are just around qualitative themes, like belief systems and stuff. I don't do that. I'm an
How do you
engineer. Still.
game a belief system?
Oh, just sometimes people have things like they'll study like ecology, make a game about what eats what, and I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just
Right.
saying I don't know. I don't know.
Right. Not your thing. Okay.
The
Fair enough.
I look at like, okay, we've got a data feed for like the amount of water that a shower is using. We've got a data feed for the emissions from a home from electricity. We've got a data feed for the satellite photographs of the amount of trees in an area. Start with the feedback loop, and then have a goal, and then figure out, well, what are all the actions we need to do to get to that goal? And then how do we, give smiley faces here, track progress, use color, do levels, sort of break it up into different sort of
Mm,
phases that have little end points. So
right. So
yeah,
you're
if I could
leveling
just,
up and you're saving of water or whatever it is you're doing.
yeah, yeah. So I just replace that word that you used of value system with environmental data feedback loop.
Okay.
So once you have that, and it's just building ways to encourage people to get that connection with the data so they can actually do behaviors that influence that data and then get a positive reward for influencing that number. And that's honestly, that's the core of what I teach and what I do. It's just we start there, and then there's just an infinite amount of layers to move up, from that sort of basic structure. And that's the sort of like gamification that like I do. But it's a really cool frame. Like when you start to think about like, I mean, I don't really know that much about like the game industry. I don't really like make games in the traditional sense, like, Roblox or Minecraft or Angry Birds. I really just look at like game game design theory. And then I think like, okay, well, how would I apply this to like getting people to like compost more? Or how would I apply this to like get people to show up? Like if you read like a book about how to design games, or you look at the techniques that are used in games and then you apply it to something in the real world, it can be quite fun. And I just really encourage people to get out of the phone, like use the real world. Like I design things all the time for physical cards. I've got all these like half finished like physical things in my house of like one's origami, and every time you fold it, like it asks you a question about like the climate. And it really works. I've tested it on a bunch of people and they fold it and they're like, which uses more energy, glass, aluminium, or plastic? And they're like, oh, it's definitely plastic. And the other person's like, no, it's definitely aluminum. And then they're just like talking and arguing, and then they're both looking it up, and then they're like, oh my god, it's like glass. Like glass is more than aluminium. It really works. Like so, but it's the physical bird. It's this origami, and other like little card kits. I got a spinning wheel the other day from Amazon. It was like a wheel, like a wheel of fortune sort of wheel. And then I stuck different environmental themes on all of it. And then each one I made a card, and I actually did it with ChatGPT so quickly. I said, like, come up with like 100 green tips for these different themes. And then it's just like, and then I export it as a spreadsheet. I import it into Canva. There's a bulk import. So I did this all in like an hour, had it all in Canva, printed it off. And then there was a party at the Hacker Dojo where I hang out. And then people were spinning the wheel. Like I did this all in a couple of hours. It was so fast. They're spinning the wheel. And I'm like, what action do you want to do? And I'm like, well, you have to do it in 14 days. And then I'm going to like follow you up. And then I put the few people I was testing it on, I got them to write it down on a bit of paper, take a selfie, and then put a calendar invite with me in 2 weeks. And I said, okay, you're going to do this for 2 weeks. And then a calendar invite, we're going to check in if you did it. That basic like setting a goal, tracking the progress, getting them to commit. Remember the 5 things earlier, getting like that sense of trust between both of us, bit of novelty, bit of fun. So this is not a video game. It's literally, it cost me $50 for the wheel on Amazon. It took me 2 hours and it was really fun. And you can just do things like that it just circumvent the whole climate doom thing. They're social, they're fun. You can take it anywhere. It's easy. And I mean, that's the sort of thing I want to encourage people to do, like use chalk, like stick things on the fridge, like just get really creative with your physical world.
What
And don't
happened?
get
I want
too
to know.
sucked
Was
in.
this, have you had your meetings, your 2 week
No,
meetings
it
with
was
people?
just last Friday.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Monday now, so it was only 2
Damn.
days ago. Yeah,
Yeah,
Friday,
we
like
need
2
to
days
know.
ago, yeah.
Right.
No,
Okay.
it's
I
sitting
want
there
to
at
know.
Hacker Dojo. I don't know. I don't know if people have been spinning it. I should get a little, like, mobile webcam and watch so I can see
Yeah. See us
when
doing
it's,
this stuff.
if
Yeah.
people are going up and using it.
But some people have arranged a call with you in 2 weeks so that you can check them up.
It was just very randomly at a party. It was just, like, random party talking, but yeah, yeah,
Fantastic.
totally worked.
Right. God, again, so many things. I'm kind of curious about game design theory. Just for my interest, this is purely me geeking out. Sorry, podcast listeners, but tell me a little bit more about game design theory, because so for me, in the dog training world, we did a lot of randomization of rewards, and that was in the 80s, and we've realized, for instance, that dopamine in dogs is it's the early part of the predatory cycle. And if you keep throwing your ball for your Malinois, you will actually drive it crazy, because it will be constantly in the see, hunt, seek, but it won't take the behavior to the point where it's also getting the oxytocin rush of the completed behavioral chain, and you basically blow all its fuses.
Interesting,
Besides
yeah.
also destroying its carpi, but that's a separate physiological thing. And so I'm wondering with people whether dopamine is also I don't know, I'm a Paleolithic individual in an initiation culture, and I'm going out hunting for blackberries, and it's the seeking, and then I find the blackberry and I eat it, probably gives a different reward set. But we're randomizing the potential for the reward set in dog behavior, and as far as I understand it, in gaming, I used to play World of Warcraft. Definitely, there's a lot of randomization in there. Randomizing when you get the reward and what kind of reward you get. There's a chance that something really good will drop, but the chances are you're going to get the same sword that you've already got 16 times already, and you just run the dungeon for 4 hours. And that's a bit distressing, but you still do it. That's the amazing thing. Many hours of my life went into World of Warcraft. So game design theory from your end, what are the key things that we're looking for?
Well, I mean, like I said, I'm really not like a game designer. So I'm not.
More than I do.
And I mean, that thing what you're mentioning is called reward prediction error. That's where the casinos
Mm.
you don't know what you're going to get. And I have it. I teach it in my behavior mapping design process. There's one card, there's one step for reward prediction error to see if you can bring randomization. And that's why the spinning wheel, people love the spinning wheel
Right.
because like you don't know which one it's going to
It's like a
go on.
roulette. You're exactly in the
Yeah.
casino.
Um, so it's like, oh, cool. Like I got like bathroom, like, oh, I have to use a shampoo bar now. Um, so the difference between what I do and what a game designer does is a game designer is designing it to keep you in the game. Like, so they're like trying to keep you into this state of play, and that's the ultimate purpose of it, for good or bad, often bad. Like my daughter's addicted to Roblox right now, which I'm really ashamed about. They've sucked her in, and the purpose of it is to make her sucked in as much as possible. That is not what I do. So I don't actually know how to do that because I don't study it and I've
Right.
never done it.
There's no point. Right.
I am trying to get you to change your behavior. I'm trying to get you to do something differently in the real world than you would have done before. And so I'm really just looking in the real world that is like not inside the computer. So I do design like apps and dashboards and stuff, but I don't, that's not the end goal. Like the end game is the end game is to be out of the game. I don't
Right.
want you to stay in the game. I want you to be out of the
Go
game.
outside, do
Game
your
is,
permaculture garden.
and that's a really different frame to
Okay,
like the
yeah.
end goal is for you to not be in the game versus a game designer is the end goal is to keep you in the game. And so they do all this sorts of stuff that's like to do with like story and to do with discovering things and levels and whole worlds and fantasy and onboarding and like group psychology. And you can kind of draw from that. Like I sort of draw from parts of it. But the thing that I do is always just that, like tracking progress towards a goal and then putting reward systems into that goal and trying to get people in groups. So what I do is very primitive compared to these really elaborate big games that exist in the world. And it's sort of like good news and bad news in a way because the environmental movement is sort of not that good at, like we're kind of pretty like at a low level, a low sort of creative level of creating these movements compared to other industries like game design or film or, we're often sort of behind because we don't really have the money that they have. And so in one way, that's kind of a bit sad that we're behind, but on a positive way, it just means that there's loads of low-hanging fruit that you can do. Like if you just like get your group of people together, let's say there's these green meetups that happen all over the time, all over the place, all over the world. There's groups of people that get together once a month on an environmental theme. If you just ask everybody to come up with a goal and then track progress and give people rewards, come up with stickers, give people a bit of group identity, um, get people to check in through a WhatsApp group instead of just turning up to the Zoom or whatever they do. Get people to do the rewards. Throw in a spinning wheel. Throw in some chalk. Like you can just use these very like simple things, and you can just totally like exponentially like blow out the impact of a group that's kind of root bound. They're just like, well, we just keep meeting all the time and just talking about the same stuff, which is a big
Depressing
complaint.
each other about the state of the world.
And
Right,
then we
you
just
could
talk
do
about,
something. Yeah, okay.
So I mean, in terms of like the game theory, that's like that's it. It doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be that hard. Small groups, 5 to 7 people with a goal. Work on it. Give yourself reward stickers. Make it fun.
Right. Yes, I heard somebody on a
In the real
podcast the other
world.
day said, don't ever try and make decisions with more people than you can fit in a car. I thought that sounded really good advice. So 5 to 7 people is that number. It's somewhere within Dunbar's number of the 150 breaks up to people you can make genuine heart connections with, and they will trust you. I think it's also roughly the same number that Audrey Tang used when they created get together with groups that are going to assess whether the AI is fake or not, or whether the video is seen as an AI fake, and that number of people can agree on something and then send it off. So there's okay. So let me get to where we're at. We we start with the low-hanging fruit, which is we start with our groups of people who care. It sounds like you were also going out and knocking people's doors, hypothetically or for real. It sounded like for real, saying, "Okay, I want to create 10 permaculture gardens." That's a lot. But leaving aside that's a lot of work. Presumably, you're going to people who are not necessarily. I mean, they might have a MAGA hat on when you knock on the door. Are you still going to say, "I'd like to do a permaculture garden"? Are we just going out into the world, or do you think it's more effective to begin with to select your tribe?
Oh, well, I mean, it just depends, where you're at. Like, some people might have a big social network. And just the thing about the MAGA hat, like, I'm a really big proponent of seeing people for their individual kind of core soul rather than the political identities that people sort of wear, like hats and outer clothing. Like, I think people's outer identities of like their religion and their politics and their veganness and like, I think they're pretty outer shells of the person, and people can change them. And usually people don't have them for very, I think, serious reasons, just because they get brought up that way or they didn't know any better. And I really don't think you should judge or assess people by that stuff, and to see them as a very outer layer of the person. And to get to know people in your community for the core essence of who they are. And the core essence of who they are they someone who would take care of your child when you're sick? Are they somebody who will, loan you like $1,000 if you're really stuck? Will they let you sleep if you were homeless? Like if you were stuck and you needed somewhere to stay? Like often people that have very different politics to us are really kind and generous people, very warm, loving people. But for some reason they've like adopted something that, we don't disagree with, or I mean,
Yeah, but it's not the core of who they are. That's exactly what you're saying. This is absolutely music to my ears because it seems to me
um,
we are so easily tribalized, and we have to find the compassionate connections between ourselves. So, yeah.
yeah, and you can have like I've had the warmest, friendliest, most soul regenerating support from people who were actively like Trump, like really pro Trump, like in the same conversation. They're like, "Oh, we love Trump." And it was like, "Let me help your daughter out. Come and stay at our place. Like, let me pay for everything." And I'm not saying anything. I'm like, "Huh, interesting." Just sort of observing this incredible warmth and support. Uh, and then I'm like, I don't know how they got to that belief system and how I got to mine, whatever, like channel. So I think if someone it comes like if someone turns up with a MAGA hat, they should be the person you are going straight for. Like, be like, and just listen, just be like, okay, you sort of followed it, I didn't. And you want a permaculture garden too, and you believe there'll be some core essence. Like if they're not like a child sexual predator, a murderer, a narcissist, like a psychopath. Like these are the things that you want to be aware of, like really toxic, dangerous psychologies. And plenty of people who are pro Democrat, vegan,
Or
apparently
people you
believe
would
about
not
the
leave your
environment.
9-year-old daughter with. Yeah.
Yeah, like these really toxic, damaging, psychopathic people. Like that's what you want to look out for, basically. Like, not whether that's the stuff that's really unchangeable, the reason why people get put in jail and, serial rapists and stuff like that. Like, don't worry too much about, like, these outer stuff. So, yeah, you find a MAGA hat, I would completely embrace that. I'd be like, "Awesome. Let's talk about it.
But would
Tell me
you
about how
I'm
much you
really
love to grow carrots, and let's
right,
talk about
exactly.
carrots," you
Because
know?
you're not gonna go in there and go, "Hey, climate change is obviously a really big problem, and I want to grow a permaculture garden." You would go in with, "We're trying to grow food in the neighborhood because we want to know where our food comes from, and are you interested in me building a permaculture garden in your yard?" Yes? That's presumably how you're gonna get there.
Yeah, and in my apartment right now, I had a guest, uh, Airbnb guest who stayed instead of being like a regular kind of roommate. He stayed every weekend because he had work in the area, and he grew up on a farm. He was a
Oh, nice.
Republican. He was one of the most friendly, generous, nicest people I've ever known. Every week he would turn up with gifts for my daughter. He'd take care of her. He'd take her out. And one day he showed up. I told him I wanted to grow food, and my food wasn't working very well. It was like dead and not growing. He'd gone out and he'd spent $200 at Home Depot. He'd bought all the proper soil. He'd bought all of the nutrients. He'd bought little plant starters. he turned up with both things on his arm. And this guy's like 60 years old. He's like a doctor, a surgeon or something. He turns up with holding both the big bags on his arm and builds all my gardens, and it all grows amazingly.
Yay!
And he's just
So-
a gift because he just wanted to help because he's a nice, generous guy who is also, we didn't ever talk about Trump, but he said he's Republican. Um, and like you see things like that. And I think about people that are Democrat voters who have been so cruel to me in the past, like really hurtfully cruel and not generous. So I just have all these experiences, and I just never ever want to judge people by that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Brilliant. Because if we can't bring everyone together, it seems to me if we say tribalized, the biophysics does not care who we vote for. The
Well,
carbon doesn't care who we vote for. If we're going to change things, we have to find the ways to unite people. And it sounds to me like you're actively doing that.
well, I don't know if I actively do it, but I just am not interested in. I'm
I
not
listened
interested
to
in
you on a
disliking
podcast
somebody.
where you went round talking to people about would they put solar panels on the roof of what sounded like a really quite different kind of neighborhood where people were not actively putting solar panels on the roof, and you went and knocked on everybody's door and said, "Hey, solar panels," and in the end you got there. Did I get that right?
No, I've never done that, but I might have said that I want to do that.
Oh, okay.
No, I think what I was saying was, yeah, in my neighborhood that I thought was just very kind of boring and no cool people, and it wasn't solar; it was just anything environmental.
Okay.
And surprisingly, I found like people were awesome. Like they were just so much
Right.
better than I expected, than I just would have thought just working around regular suburbs. But can I just this other thing I was thinking of with this whole us and them situation, which I think you'd appreciate. Did you say that you were a vet? You used to
It
be a
used to be
vet?
a long time ago. Yeah.
Okay, so you've had a science education. Um, think of no matter where you are in humanity in timeline, in the past, in the future, whatever country you're in, people's opinions are always going to fall on a bell curve. So
Hmm.
it's not this particular thing, like Trump, Elon Musk versus Democrats, or climate change versus not climate change. That's just our issue of the time. No matter what you're going to be in, there's going to be a bell curve.
Okay.
Even if you're in the vegan movement has one of the most hateful infighting scenes of anything I've ever seen on YouTube.
Yeah.
So if you take that bell curve and you just take the 1% of the most vegan, they've got their own little bell curve within that. And
Okay.
they're warring because like one person's like, it's okay to eat an egg that's like, or it's okay to have like fish in your compost. And you know what I mean? Like they're warring.
Right.
So it's
Okay.
like
So
no
the
matter what.
1% bell curve, and then within that bell curve, there's there's
Yeah, so
infinitely iterative bell curves.
yeah. So no matter what community you will ever be in any place, time, like a community, there will be bell curves where you'll be on one side and other people will be on the other. So if
Okay.
you want to live your life that way of just deciding that, oh, I hate everybody else who's on the other half, no matter what it is, if we're all vegans, I hate all the other vegans because they think it's okay to like eat gelatin or something. Like, or all the solar panel people are like, well, we think that you should have this many solar panels. Like, if you're just going to be the person that hates everybody who has the opposite opinion, like, is that really who you want to be? Or do you want to be like, okay, well, we've got to solve the problem and everybody sees it a bit
Yeah.
differently. And I'm not going to hate 50% of the population because they think differently to me. I'm just not interested in hating 50% of the population because they're seeing it differently.
Or any
Even if like
percent of
I'm
the
right.
population.
Yeah. Even if like I'm actually
I
right.
am right.
Let's say,
Yeah.
even if I'm right and they're wrong, like, I'm like, "It's okay," you know? Like, it's just they haven't sort of figured it out yet, and, whatever. They'll figure it out eventually or not.
Or not. Or maybe I'll figure it out.
Maybe I'm end up finding out that I'm wrong in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, I was talking to somebody recently. He wrote a book. It's coming out later about fallibility. It was a book about how to actually find well-being rather than going for happiness all the time. And one of the keys was fallibility, accepting that quite a lot of what we think is probably wrong, and and holding the mindset of it's it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to not be completely right. And one of the things that social media seems to me to do is to back us into corners where we are likely, you've got 280 characters or whatever to state something. So there's no nuance to it. And it brings people to the edges of the bell curves. But it can also be Audrey Tang's got some brilliant ideas of how to use social media to bring people more into the center, to find what she calls the uncommon ground that everybody has. And you just need to know what it is. And once you've found it, then people are really happy to link across between the edges of the bell curve. Probably a whole other podcast. Alrighty, we are heading towards the end of our time. It always takes me completely by surprise. I don't know how we get through time so fast. However, I found on your LinkedIn a really lovely bit of artwork, and it says, "At first, it seemed crazy, but then some little piece of wild sci-fi solar punk artwork incarnated into an office, a backyard, a street, and a school somewhere near you. And so the revolution began. Maybe the person who put it there was you." And that just made my day perfect. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for finding it. And it beautifully kind of summarizes our whole conversation about taking big visions into small actions and how our small individual actions then propagate up into this sort of bigger vision of systems change. And so I wrote that. I put out a calendar, like an eco futures calendar last year. And I just discovered Mid-Journey for doing like eco futures artwork. And I got really obsessed with Mid-Journey and making like every type of like eco future type of artwork. And it was really fun. And because I had a bit of an art background, I could give it all these different prompts that I think were a bit unusual that people hadn't thought of before. Like, like Andy Warhol. If Andy Warhol did a watercolor with morning golden light through worm's eye view, and I was just all the weird combinations.
Is this an AI? I don't know what Midjourney is. It's
On
an AI
Midjourney, yeah, it's
graphic
an
thing.
AI art. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
it's great.
cool.
I have a lot of them on my Instagram if you want to check it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of went into this hole for like 8 weeks and just did nothing else. But anyway, um, I tried to do a combination of eco-future visions that were like super futuristic-y, like the stuff that if I'm just like in my total like deep imagination world that I can think of. And also stuff that I felt was really practical. Like if, you just had like a normal street and you put like a little raised garden bed on a normal street with a kid growing a tomato. Um, and these kind of like really wild kind of futuristic stuff that was coming out of it. It was really fun, like Blade Runner, like Star Wars, uh, gardens hanging off everything, lettuces growing on roofs and sides of buildings, robots, stuff. I was really sort of I had to describe like why I felt it was still important to do this artwork, because also when you're doing stuff on social media, there's always a little voice in the back of your head, like one person's going to have something really bitchy to say. Like the more social media you do, you kind of the voice is there, like, oh, people are going to love this, and then there's going to be the person who says this, and I'm like, and it's not the first time, somebody will be like, oh, these like ridiculous, unrealistic eco cities are just like like it's like unrealistic, it's like unhopeful, it's like no one would ever do that. It doesn't have emergency vehicle access, like it's going to be full of insects and then we'll get bitten by mosquitoes. It's just like, um, or it's going to take lots of concrete and steel and who's going to build it, who's going to fund it. And so I really had to put into words like and why a powerful, out there, unrealistic science fiction, futuristic vision that is just so profoundly beautiful and unbounded by all these like realistic expectations, like why I felt this was important and why I really, from the depths of my soul, believed that we needed to have these um, just profoundly beautiful, uninhibited visions of what humanity and what cities and this connection with nature could be. Um, and so I just wrote that quote. I just wrote like, well, it's not that we need to completely like reconstruct everything to be in these like biophilic towers, like, and suddenly like, it's not that this is an architectural template that we're necessarily going to follow, but it's an essential ingredient. It's an essential seed of the imagination that when someone sees something that wild, it grabs your attention, it puts a seed in your imagination. And then you're like, that seed then goes out into your normal behavior. And you're just like, hey, maybe I could just put a little plant out here, on the office, or maybe we could install a green wall here, or maybe we could put in a street tree here, and it's that if the if the artwork wasn't that profound and beautiful and sort of stimulating, it wouldn't get you enough. It wouldn't get you in your soul and your mind enough to put the effort in. And so it's going to trickle down into the small everyday behaviors and then sort of trickle up from there. So, yeah,
Fantastic.
that's the story.
It's beautiful. Can I put that in the show notes too, or can we use that picture? Just
Yeah,
put it
yeah.
out? Yeah.
I'm not into
Okay.
copyright. I just take everything. I don't mind.
All right.
Share it,
Yeah, no, it
whatever.
looks
Yeah.
lovely. Okay, guys, it will be in the show notes. That's grand. Katie, it feels like we should talk forever, but is there anything else? Do you want to tell us about anything else you've got coming up besides the thing whose name I've already forgotten that we talked about earlier? Remind me what it was
The
called?
School of Climate Action Design.
Yes, thank you. I've got too many bits of paper now. School of Climate Action Design that everybody is going to want to go and join because it sounds amazing. You get to talk to PhDs in behavioural change. Yes. Anything else that you want to tell us about that you've got coming up or that people could go and explore?
Yeah, I post on LinkedIn every day, like a
You
behavioral
do.
psychology tip or something useful, hopefully useful or inspiring. So follow me on LinkedIn. If the School of Climate Action Design sounds interesting, there should be links to join the waitlist. And if you want free tutorials, I do have an email list, which I promise you is not a boring, annoying newsletter. I put a huge amount of effort into making the best possible tutorials of different biophilic cities, imagination, like real practical stuff that you can use. It's genuinely interesting, but I don't have anywhere else. It's on my email list. You'll see it on my website. So it's at helloworldy // action tips.
I will find a link
You'll
and put
love
that
that.
in the
And I
show
get
notes too.
genuine like people emailing me back saying like, this was amazing. This blew my mind. Like I really went all
Fantastic.
out to make, because I know what email is like. Like it's not good to have too many of them. So I've like, if I'm going to put emails in your inbox,
Really
it's
not.
going to be
Yeah,
really
it's got to be
good.
worth it.
So sign
Great.
up for that. That's free, and easy to get. And if you want like a professional sort of in-depth program, then there's the School of Climate Action Design.
Super. We will put links to all of that in the show notes. You're a single mother. You're committing to making people 10 permaculture gardens, which I would have thought was
Oh,
a
I haven't
full-time
done that
job.
yet. I want to. I want to.
Okay. But when do you sleep, Katie? Because you sound like you put a post up on LinkedIn all the day and you're creating this new school and then you go into Midjourney and create a calendar. Do you sleep?
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Yeah, I do. Well, there's I mean, I feel like I move pretty slowly. Like, I mean, it took me 6 months to build the climate action design school, to put it all together and to put the software.
You
Um,
you learned you taught yourself how to code somewhere along the line from when you were 8 and buying
yeah.
dolphin
I mean,
mugs to
also
now.
I don't have like a real job, like I'm self-employed. Like I have all my time is for me to do what I want to do.
Right.
So I don't
Yeah.
like have to turn up somewhere that's going to take up like
And
40 or
and
50
and go
hours
into
of my.
meetings and listen to other people being boring. Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of trade off that I get like a steady salary. Like some people that write books and stuff, for example, they have maybe okay, they're a professor at a university and they have that. I don't have that, so I trade off the stability, but I do have all of my time to create whatever I want. Which leads me in a lot of directions. So I'm trying to pull it in one direction. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm always active. I'm always doing stuff. But I don't know. I don't feel like I really do that much. I mean, I just do one thing and then I make it, I put it out into the world, and then I make another thing.
And they're beautiful. Genuinely beautiful. That's how I found you on LinkedIn was you were posting really interesting, incredibly useful and beautiful things. So thank you very much indeed for helping us to understand how systems change can happen, actually. Because that's very rare. People talk about systems change, but actually make it happen. You feel to me like someone who's really in there at ground level. You've worked it out and you know how we can change the numbers. And that's absolutely invaluable. So, unless there's anything else you wanted to say, thank you for coming on to the Accidental Gods podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And if you want to take a deeper dive into the systems change, like I said, I did record a 4-part series on
I
that.
will find it.
And if anybody wants to really go into that, and yeah, systems change starts with you. It's with your community. Like, don't worry about it. Just focus on your own community and, make a positive impact there.
I'll find it. I'll put it in the show notes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for having me. It was delightful.